and hello everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. I am your host, Pete Bickford. I am the creator of ComicBase and get into a number of other systems like Atomic Avenue around here. But anyway, welcome. For the next hour or so, we'll be talking about some really big ComicBase news. We'll be talking all about Burning Man. That's the next major edition of ComicBase. It's coming out very shortly. Answering any questions that we can fit in, but I've got, honestly, I've got a lot of stuff to get through, so we will get right on that as soon as I possibly can. Let me go and pull up my chat interface so I can see what y'all are doing out there. Let's see here. And Greg says, yes, just note, I'm joining you guys a little late today, but he's here now. Yes, I'm as confused as everyone else. Greg, it's great to see you, as well as Oro and everyone. And why is my screen not wanting to resize to show me what is going on? Oh my goodness. Give me just a second here while I restart here to record graphics. By the way, there's a number of wonderful programs that make this whole crazy, enterprise possible. One of them is put out by a lovely guy in Norway called, oh geez, now I'm going to blank on his name. But anyway, and it provides all the graphics for the show. Whenever we click on a chat subscription or whatever else, that's the thing that lets me spotlight who's talking and so forth. Let me just pull up the YouTube key, put it back into the whole thing, and hopefully I'll be able to see everyone's stuff. Excellent. Oro, great to see you. Greg, Richard, Steve, Dazinger, awesome. Great to see everyone. Okay, I think we are about ready to get the show on the road. First of all, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us get the word out, and we did actually cross over the threshold limit of subscribers that allows us to have our content automatically start getting spooled along to some of these other systems like Odyssey. I would like to get another couple hundred subscribers in there, because then it allows us to automatically stream some of the longer format content to those things. I do, in the next year, definitely want to do more with live streaming with guests, and also putting it out to multiple places, because I don't know about the rest of y'all, but we're starting to feel a little boxed in around YouTube. Not that it doesn't have a great interface for doing things like that, but honestly, the situation of what can be said or not said is so dicey. It just has everyone looking over their shoulder all the time, and I'm kind of sick of it. So we're looking forward to getting onto some of these other systems, so that no matter what system you like watching videos on, we can broadcast it to you there. So help us out, but the magic apparently starts with hitting that like and subscribe on YouTube, and then everything else gets better. Anyway, thank you again. Let's get onto it. Hello to Andre and everyone, and yeah, let's get to it. Oh, and Xandu, good to see you, everyone. Hello from Seattle. All right, so the next version of ComicBase is called Burning Man, and I thought I'd stop for a couple minutes and just talk about, like, dude, you started naming ComicBase after years, a number of years ago. It's not really a surprise what you're going to call the next one. So what's with all this codename stuff? And what it comes down to is, it's almost like the working title of an album for us. Internally, there's a point when, like, we stop working at ComicBase 2021 so much. We'll fix bugs, do things like that, but we stop trying to add new features or do major things with it, and we sort of, it's called forking the code. We switch our efforts to being able to devise a brand new awesome version of whatever it is our next thing is. Now, most years that's called ComicBase, add one to the year, and that's what we're doing. Sometimes, if it's a really big project, it doesn't come out every year. Sometimes, like with ComicBase 2020, it took us 4 years to do that one, and in the meantime we had to sneak other feature upgrade releases into older versions of ComicBase, even though we were simultaneously working, to convert the entire code base of some, I forget how many, I think honestly it was like 300,000 lines of code to a new language, new database service, and whatever else. I mean, it was crazy. So things don't always go as planned, so it's good to have working titles for the different efforts. I'm a longtime Silicon Valley guy. I used to have my entire wardrobe was furnished with project shirts from one side or another from working at Apple and other Silicon Valley companies. I finally managed to throw out most of the ones that aren't really cool, and so forth. But I mean, I had one for like Apple System 7, when I was working on that stuff. Anyway, one of the major reasons, other than you not really sure what the next version of the program's going to be called, is you have a code name because it allows you to kind of conceptualize what you're doing, and also it's like an album. It gives you an excuse to have a good T-shirt. For us, we chose Burning Man this time out, and why Burning Man? Well, there's two reasons. One of them, and I'll get to the obvious one first. It's a bit of a tribute to the Burning Man Festival, which was canceled, unfortunately, for the last 2 years. Let me show a couple pictures of this one. It's interesting because this is something that takes place out in the desert. If you're a Californian or any place along the West Coast, you travel in a big caravan way out to the playa with a whole bunch of your friends, and you have to make do for a week. If you go to Burning Man, on everything you are going to consume, you better have brought with you water, the whole 9 yards. But it's this incredible. I mean, thousands and thousands of people go to this thing every year. But it's a volunteer-driven effort. It's out in the middle of freaking nowhere. I mean, this is the most inhospitable place on earth to do anything. And what it started out, it's basically an arts and music festival. But it's really also just a celebration of just crazy individual creativity. And what it started out with is, back in the 80s, there was a guy in the Bay Area who liked throwing just end of summer not barbecues, but bonfires. And then he said, well, one day I'm kind of an artist, I'll throw something on the bonfire. And he had a little kind of like a sculpture of a nailed together a couple boards and put together a thing of a man, and threw that on there. And then the next year it's like, well, okay, we'll make it bigger, and now it's an 8-foot tall man, and then it's a 20-foot tall man, and then eventually it gets into this thing because he turned over the reins to this whole thing when it started getting bigger than him, and it became this insane thing where you go out on the desert with all sorts of crazy art and inventory type folks like yourselves, just have some kind of crazy hobby in the back of your head. Maybe you like just cosplaying. Maybe you are just an insane welder. Maybe you just really like doing 3D modeling, whatever the thing is. And you go out there onto the playa and you spend weeks setting up these incredible art installations, tall ships. I mean, they tend to be very whimsical. They don't make any sense at all, and they're just neat to look at, or they make you just feel something different that you didn't feel beforehand. Because it's a very techie crowd that does these sorts of things. I mean, incredible uses of again 3D printing and lasers and LEDs and whatever else. Integrations of sound and light and movement and having sculptures that are sensitive to the people around them. Whatever the thing is that you can come up with. And then, just as importantly, after you've built these incredible structures, just out of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, very important, on the last day, you burn the whole damn thing down. Because it's not meant to be permanent. It's just meant to go out there, make some art, do something that brings some whimsy to people. Honestly, it's a whole bunch of young people, so a lot of other people like it. And also do a whole bunch of drugs and and meet a whole bunch of people you feel like sleeping with. That's also on the program for a number of other people who arrive there. But I think for the truest burner sensation of the whole thing is just go out there, do something awesome, and then burn it all down, and then come back next year and top it. And that's kind of I like that mode. It's something that when I look around, and sometimes we get very cynical about, the institutions around us, the politicians around us and everything, and you sit there and say, well, what do I trust? Do I trust the media? God knows not. Do I trust that that dude in office who to tell me what's up in the world? Oh, hell no. What do I trust? In general, I trust people's creative instinct. I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to lead any place good in particular. It might mean someplace completely silly, or even counterproductive. But it does strike me as one of the purer things in the human spirit. Is just the idea I want to make something cool, and that's something that we definitely are embracing with our own philosophy here at Human Computing, and also in this release. Now, that's where the name kind of came from. But then it kind of also took on a particular format, because every year And we don't have to. I mean, there's no reason to. We sell software digitally, for goodness sake. You guys have already bought it by the time you get to see the cover most of the time. But we've always had this tradition of we wanted to commission a really cool cover for every edition of ComicBase that we do. And with rare exceptions, we've always managed to make that happen. Sometimes we have crazy things go on, but it's one of the joys of the whole thing is we get to choose a concept and tell some absolutely world-class artists that we work with. It's like, hey, we would like to do something that looks a bit like this. Well, probably about 9 months ago, we had a show where we asked everyone, hey, what would you like to see for the new cover? We've done everything. We've done sci-fi, we've done adventure, we've done mummies, we've done stuff in the jungle, we've done you name it. It's been on a comic-based cover at some point. We rocket ships, steampunk. We're like, well, what would you guys like? And one thing that came up, and someone who might be watching the podcast suggested, well, how about a bank robbery? And I'll admit, my immediate reaction was, jeez, bank robbery, ugh. Yeah, I did not actually say this to the person. So if you're listening now, I'm sorry. But what I was thinking is, like, one thing about, as soon as you say the words bank robbery, all of us have seen enough movies like this that we all know what the first 7 minutes of the movie look like, or at least when you finally do the action. There's the part where the crew assembles. They are going to jump through the bank doors. They're going to rack a shotgun, say everyone hold it there. Someone's going to go for an alarm. Someone's going to either get shot or get warned off of it. Blah 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 blah. We've seen the damn movie. It's like with rare beats that get done any differently. We like the opening of Batman the Dark Knight had a few beats that were a little different, but they worked because we all knew what to expect with any of it. So I'm just sitting there thinking, bank robbery, ugh. But no one else seemed to really have anything else that really sparked any enthusiasm on the whole thing. And anyway, around the time we got the notice that Burning Man was going to be canceled for the year, and I was like thinking, Burning Man, bank robbery, and I had a thought. And worked out over the time, and it eventually became something which will show you, at least in sketch format, looked a little bit like this. And I'll show it to you a bit, but because it's not the fully realized thing, I won't dwell on it too much. But let's go to it here. What if the person robbing the bank was not your average Joe? What if, and for that matter, what if he wasn't a supervillain, whatever else? What if it was just some guy from Venice Beach, who just got a hit of some horrible new thing that his dealer gave him, and he had a reaction that was not at all what you would expect. And so the idea was you've got basically just an out-of-his-mind crazy guy in there walking into a bank. There's, I don't know if you guys can make out the finer details, but I mean, he's a bad guy. There's a dead lady, teller in the bank, and he's basically out of his mind, and he's holding out his hands, doing the Human Torch thing, except, when the poor rent-a-cop or local, sheriff PD comes to check on him, you're not looking at, I mean, this is not a heavily armed, SWAT team going after this guy. This is just some poor guy responding to an alarm. And he's actually not even being directly threatened by our villain in this one. The villain's actually got his hands, it's ambiguous intentionally. So is he there to torch the money? Is he there to torch the cop? Or is he just not even care anymore? And I just like the concept of just having a guy absolutely out of his mind who, you're not sure if he's there to bring down the system, destroy the whole thing, or or just whatever he wants to. But I love the whole thing, and in our mind, he became, our name for the character basically became Burning Man, and that just over a very short period of time gelled very quickly into, we knew what the cover was going to be, and we knew what the code name was going to be in a very short order, and then we just, it just all kind of took off from there. So that is where the whole thing goes. Where it's been for a while, COVID has obviously made everything very interesting for painters and actors and whatever else. But we're going to be going out initially with the sketch cover, followed very shortly by the final rendering of the whole thing. But I just thought I'd show a couple of the the production bits the artist took over here. This is actually the model they chose to represent our guy. You might notice, among other things, that despite the scraggly hair of the guy in the picture, this guy's completely bald. So they have another person they are comping in. Essentially, was the wig model for this thing. I haven't seen the picture of the cop yet. I'm very interested in what they got for that. But the artist is Laurel Bleckman. She's done our last 3 covers and has collaborated on a number of the other ones with her partner, Glenn Orbick, who unfortunately passed away. And the way that she works is basically she poses, dresses, costumes, the entire scene ahead of time, figures out a light palette to go with everything, and then paints from the photos that she's already essentially happened. So in a very weird, strange way, the scene has almost occurred already by the time she paints it. And so she's painting from sepia tone images of the photos she's taken in order to create the final scene. So it looks like she's running a little bit behind on that one. So it's going to be touch and go as to whether we have the final color counts by the time we're shipping. We'll definitely have them a few days later. But in the meantime, we're going to do something we did before, and we're going to go out initially with the sketch cover, and that'll just be the limited edition for the first people who get it. And after they're gone, they're gone. In the meantime, digitally, of course, you can always swap in the art. Just download a later update, and you'll get the color version as your splash screen. But if you're buying it in physical format, if you want the sketch cover, it'll only be the first few out the door that go out that way. But anyway, that's the story behind the Burning Man on this one. Let me quickly check chat, and then we'll get on to what the heck this thing actually does. Let's see. Let me see here. Andre says, Pete, what append to the cover disc? Can you explain it? I'm not sure I follow the question exactly. Maybe you can ping me later on with a little more. I'm not exactly following it. Sorry. Let's. Oh, can I? What happened to the download of the cover disc? Can I explain? Still there. Well, let's follow up later. I'm not sure. And let's see here. And Oro says, have I been lucky enough to go to a Burning Man? A dream of mine. No, I have not actually. Ironically, it's like the people who go to Burning Man, they're called burners. I own a burner. It's a pretty bad dog. No, I've been. Burning Man isn't my thing. But what is my thing is a thing that's very similar called Maker Faire. Maker Faire is if you get rid of the drugs and the orgy part of Burning Man and the wild desert part, and you simply locate all the cool stuff to the San Mateo County Fairgrounds for 3 days of just absolute geekdom. I've been to almost all the Maker Fairs there ever were. Unfortunately, I think that one's also packed up. I hope someday it comes back or something like it, because it's just amazing stuff. I mean, there are guys who created like a life-sized mousetrap game, where it literally does have the cage that falls over things and the bowling ball that rolls down the tube and the huge boxing glove. They have guys who their medium is fire and propane gas, and they drive around the whole thing in a fire truck, and of course it spits fire everywhere. It's like, well, why would you call it a fire truck if it didn't spit fire? I mean, it should be called a water truck. Anyway, they have all sorts of this crazy stuff going on there. All sorts of art cars. If you don't watch when you're crossing the street, you'll get hit by motorized cupcakes going by. It's and then of course the robotics and other things that are going on Maker Fairs are just nuts. But I guess if you take the whole thing, age it out to the 20, 30-year-olds and throw it out on the playa, then you got Burning Man. But it's kind of the same vibe. So anyway, I probably 10 years old, too old to really enjoy Burning Man myself. But that's all right, man. I got kids and a family, so I still just dig the creativity part. All right, moving on. Orel says, yes, maybe we reserve a copy of the sketch cover. When it goes for sale, all you gotta do is just get your order in the first bunch, and you will get the sketches. And while supplies last, because the second that we get the film drop on the final art, then we just simply swap out the production runs. So we'll take it from there. All right, well, let's talk about what's in this darn thing anyway, shall we? All right, so I've got my show notes I'm staring over. So why Burning Man? Got it. All right, so. So what's this release all about, right? And it might come as a surprise to you, or maybe if you watch these live streams before, it won't come as no surprise to you whatsoever, that even though we're a tech company, we don't really, most of the time, plot out in massive detail. Okay, so for version 23.7 of the product, these are the priority A features, the priority B features. These are the ones that will that will get them in as a stretch goal. Where else? We kind of have informal lists like that. They tend to be written up on whiteboards, but we don't sit there and say, okay, we've analyzed the market, and what we've calling for is the 17% of our customers say that they want blah. We honestly don't have that level of detail on y'all, and I don't know if we do it if we could. Just like a while ago, we figured out that the best marketing number we could ever put in, and we really did have good marketing numbers on everybody who was buying ComicBase, but someone just summed it up the whole thing beautifully and says, look, the people you sell to, it's people who have enough comics to have a problem. Long and short of it, it's not about household income, it's not about years of education. It's just, I have enough comics to know that I have a problem, and it's like, damn. Nailed it. And that has been the way we've looked at it ever since. With comic-based features, a number of years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, we used to keep lists and project sheets and stuff like that in a much more formalized manner. But what it really came down to is we kind of figured out, I think it was just an extemporaneous thing I said once at a user group meeting. It's like, yeah, my goal every year is to basically do something that's cool enough on the next version that it makes you miserable that you have last year's version. And so if, it's like I want it every year. I'm busting my butt to give you the best possible version of ComicBase we possibly can come up with around here. And by next year, I have to make you hate that that's the version you're using and not the new one. And if I can make that trick happen, then we've done our job, because that's how software that's sold on an upgrade version every year goes. One thing that's made it really interesting is, when we said that, we used to come out once a year, and so we would have 12 or 11 or 12 months just to burrow down, with our heads down and think of what the next thing was, and then spring it on everyone. Ever since, the last 4 or 5 years minimum, we've been putting out continuous releases, and so we have to not only be throwing all these little things in as we go, but we also have to, when we do that big fork of the product stuff, we have to keep enough interesting stuff that was like our big idea stuff off the radar, so that we can surprise you at least a little bit with what we've got going on. But it's a little bit harder of a trick. But so basically it comes down to, put your best work out there, make it awesome, and make it so much better than last year's version that, last year you're a little bummed out if you're still using, ComicBase 2021. So now, let me proceed, hopefully, to bum you out at least a little bit with the version you're running right now. So, all right. So, thematically, you want to do a few things. Whenever you do a big release software, you want to handle the big problems that you see coming up, the big strategic issues. So what are the things we see going on in the comic market that, if we could address this problem, we'd either save everyone a big headache, or we'd empower you going forward in some way. And honestly, saving you from big headaches is probably even more powerful than giving you something new, because we've been at this for a while, and it's I think people fear bad things more than they look forward to good things, by and large. I think that's something I've had to come to grips with over the years, because I tend to be a kind of a techno geek, so if I could put something that's kind of bright and shiny in there, I'm usually happy to do that. But if I can save you from getting pain in your life, or at least take something that was kind of awful or a little bit cumbersome to use and make it better, that's usually a better value hit for us. So let's talk about some of the things we took on. All right, so the biggest thing, and I'll switch over the screen now. The biggest thing, whoa, wrong, that was the overhead monitor. I want there you go. So the biggest thing we had to deal with that was just strategically coming up, it was just burying us alive. It's over 82% of the comics on the market at this point, and that's variants. You can see, this is a 1963 series now. The Avengers, that over time has acquired so many new printings of the first one that the variants, not the second print, but the variants on number one now stretch down to F. You go to Avengers of the current series, I think what are we up to? 8th series now? And the variants are psychotic. This is the same for everything. Let's look at, say, Black Widow. I think we've also hit eight series of Black Widow in just a couple years. Yeah, so yeah, no, it is absolutely psychotic how many variants you have out in the world. How to identify them? You know, how do I tell? Whoops, sorry about that one. Let me switch out of. I'll worry about that one in a bit. Sorry, I have this stuff rigged to our current server production service. Certain things I can't show up, but I will switch those as I need to. But I mean, how do you deal with the trade dress versions versus the the second printing versions versus the alternate logo versions, whatever else? And it's psychotic, and there's so many different ways of naming the variants. There's the way that they get described on the initial solicitations that come from the publishers. Later on, you get the ones that come up from. I'm going to put myself in picture here so I can be at least slightly entertaining as we go. So when we get something like the 2A version of Black Widow over here, this one, game variant covered by Matteo DeLulis, right? That might, first of all, what the heck's a game variant? I don't know what that means. And it might just say, game color A, Matteo DeLucas, or DeLulis, game color A. That could get written out about 20 different ways. It tells me nothing about what this thing looks like. And then what do you do as over time people start filling in more data about this one? It's not just the DeLulis cover, it's the Mattia DeLulis cover. It's not just the variant cover, it's the game variant cover. Or is it the special cardstock one? Is it the cardstock enhanced one, and so forth? Now, in the past, we've always had to put this stuff in the notes field. That was the only thing that had described, where comic covers were. And the rule on notes field updates was if you'd written something on Black Widow #2, let's say this is the first appearance of Black Widow's kid sister or something, your note, first appearance of Black Widow's kid sister, would then get stacked onto with anything we put down, Mattia, variant cover. Well, okay, the problem with the stacking part, so far so good until we get a better description. So then it's like, okay, it's the Mattia DeLulis cover. And at which point, now, if you look at your note for it, it will say, first appearance of Black Widow's little sister, DeLulis cover, Mattia DeLulis cover. Okay, this is starting to suck. And then later on, someone will point out this is the game variant, and then it'll say first appearance of Black Widow's sister, DeLulis cover, Mattia DeLulis cover, game variant by DeLulis cover. And then someone will also point out that it's the 1 in 25 retailer incentive cover, blah, 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 and suddenly you're just in hell. There has to be a way of doing two things for this one. We need a way of, first of all, separating what you say about an issue from what we need to say about an issue just to identify it. And we also have to have a way of correcting things to make them better. I mean, I think we'd all probably agree that a cover description says something like, game variant, sponsored by Nintendo, Mattia DeLulis cover, purple on background, is probably a better description than DeLulis cover, right? But whatever we have to say about it all, we need to be able to say, yeah, and this replaces what we said before. It doesn't append to it, it replaces it. So we don't have notes stacking infinitely to the C. We also need to have a way of heading off the problem where we will get all the solicitations for, say, the first 5, 6, 7, 20, however many the publisher felt like telling us about when it was time to actually go to press. But then that isn't necessarily the end of the story, because for the next, again, Avengers #1 came out in 1963. 50 years later, you can come back later and decide that, oh no, we've had 5 different variants of this whole thing, which, we use this one for a promotion with, Scope. We use this one as a promotional for Wizard World, Atlanta or something. And so you can keep on stacking up these variants, and then they could start conflicting with each other, because once we've dealt with the initial set of data that we get from the publisher, everything else is catch as can catch. There's no centralized list. We are the centralized list. We're as good as it gets of saying that this is the list of variants. And so whoever writes in that cover number 23, or the Y cover of this thing is it's the hollow foil whatever one. If he gets there before somebody else, then cover Y is going to be the hollow foil cover, and Z is going to be whatever's next. And so if you submit corrections across each other that says, well, no, I really thought that one should have been the Z cover and the other one should have been the Y cover, we can't take it because somebody's already put inventory into one or the other. And so we need to have a way of just really grabbing hold of the thing that describes what is a particular variant and saying, yes, we're going to control that part. We're the people who who vet whether or not something is describing it according to style. We're going to vet whether or not people are putting conflicting information. Before, for instance, one person could post a correction which says, this is the Delula cover, and somebody else could say it's the, Louis Del Rey cover, whatever else. And if we weren't careful, if we didn't catch it at the time, it might wind up saying that it's both. We obviously can't have that. So we need to be able to control the whole thing. And so we added a whole new item description field. So the item description field. And I'm gonna pull one sneaky thing behind your back, because I want to, excuse me just a second here, ignore Black Widow just for a moment. I'm going to set one thing, because I want to get to this, but I want to get to a little bit later. Dooba-dooba-doo, boom. Okay. Actually, I know how an even better way to get to this. I'm going to reset my covers to be on my local machine. So I'm going to go to the File menu. I'm going to go to Manage Pictures and Movies. I'm going to reset the thing not from our shared directory in-house, but to my local machine. And it's going to clear out all my references, so it's going to zero my pictures back to nothing, but we will be ready to go in just a second. Alright, in the meantime, let me check the chat and see how we're doing on things. Dooba-dooba-doo. I only have about 20 windows going here, so bear with me just a moment. Okay, alright, let's see here. Greg, oh, hey, welcome back, Greg. And let's see here. Let's see, yeah, just as I'm so tired of the multiple Marys. If you want to make just one, just fine. Alright, so, alright, let's go ahead and get back to this. Okay, so, I've now reset this one so it's getting pictures not off of our master picture store, but from my local machine. Oh, alright, and let me go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm going to put one setting back because I have something very cool to show, but I don't want to show it to you just yet. Okay, boom. Alright. Now, if you guys were really clever, you will have caught something kind of weird there. Alright. Alright. Let's go ahead and just refresh that. And I think should be almost ready to rock. Okay. Alright. I'm gonna do one. I'm actually gonna exit, come back in, come back out, just to make sure I've saved my prefs. Give me just a sec. Welcome to live TV, folks, or at least live podcast. Alright. Alright, and I believe we're just about good to go. Okay, cool. Alright, so, let's see here. Let me find my place. Deal with the variants. Yes. So we want to be able to deal with all the different variants. A, B, C, D, F, G. We want to have an item description field that will let you actually control, what something is called. So there's now actually a field up here which says, it's called item description. It's at the very top, which indicates whether or not this is, which cover is which. And because we say so, this is the variant cover by J. Scott Campbell. It doesn't appear in your notes anymore. The very first time that you... Oh my goodness. We lost... Oh, that sucks. We've lost the video feed from the computer. That is so weird. Alright, give me a second, guys. Checking cables. Oh, and it just popped down. Okay. We're back. Alright, there we are. Alright guys, like I say, live TV. Alright. So we want the ability to say, this is the variant cover by J. Scott Campbell. It's not in the notes field anymore. And the very first time that you launch ComicBase 2022, which is what Burning Man is going to become this year, I'll just make it official right now, it will actually go ahead and sift through all of your notes to pull out the identifying information for the various issues, move it out of your notes field. The notes field really ought to be yours. It shouldn't really be ours, you know, except, you know, if we need to say things like, you know, this is for the first appearance of this guy or whatever else. But honestly, we want to not junk it up with a bunch of stuff that we inflicted your way if we can avoid it. All the stuff that identifies which edition this is, which variant it is, it gets moved out automatically to the item description cover. But after that, the default as you move forward is that we control this field in a way that we do not control notes. With notes, we only stack our information on top of yours. This one becomes more of a regular field in the update where you can allow us, say, you know, do you want to allow corrections to this field? And if so, that's definitely going to be the default. If so, then we're going to, you know, give you the best version of the item description field, but we'll give you one version. We won't give you 80 versions which describe the same cover. All right, that's part number one. It's a remarkably heavy amount of plumbing under the covers to make that all happen, but it was crucial to have done. Next thing that happens, and you guys have actually seen this one ahead of time because it got to be such a big deal. We had to roll with it early. Is what do we do when you've got more than 26 versions of a cover, right? So beforehand, you know, if you had a particular cover, we would say, okay, this is the A cover, the B cover, the C cover, the D cover, etc. But now we will say, okay, look, you know, what do we do after Z, right? You know, beforehand we would say, okay, this is the 1A second printing cover, third printing, fourth printing through the 58th printing, although it wasn't really a second or 50th printing. Wow, I just saw on the program monitor, the program window just went down again. This blows. Wow, okay. And, oh, come on. All right, hang on. I'm going to plug and unplug the switcher on the back there because something seems to be loose. Excuse me just a moment, folks. All right, guys. Well, that's back. I see me on the monitor, but I'm not seeing the computer. Oh, Lord. And I saw, oh, man, this is weird. I'm seeing it flicker on and off on my monitor. It's literally pulsing up and down. Up, and then settled down again. Wow, okay, it seems to be on again. All right, so at the moment, wow. If this doesn't stop, this is going to get really freaking old. Oh boy, what do you do here? Okay, I'm going to plug and unplug video cards one last time. Sorry about this, guys. I will be right back. Okay, wow, that made things horrible. Okay. Well, this is kind of special. Oh man, oh man. All right, so what's happening here as I'm looking on my computer is excuse me just a moment as somebody tries to spam me, is if I take my entire switcher and I hold it up in the air, it got my computer image back, but it was flickering. I'm gonna hope to God it just stays there for a bit, because well, yeah, I got things on the wrong monitor, but I'm gonna have to deal with it at the moment because I need this to get rocking. All right, so we're gonna play the ball from where it lands. Welcome to live TV. All right, so back to us and back to screen number 4. Yay! All right, let's call this as it goes. All right, so as we were saying, and let's see if we can get the picture-in-picture back. Looks like we are. Okay, yeah, so you guys have seen the part before where what we've done, instead of abusing the variant fields, because we leaked this one out, it just got to be such a big problem during the course of this last version that we took the tech on this one and we rolled it backward into the older versions of ComicBase. Excuse me just a second while you know what? I will just be silencing that. Okay. So now, if you have any versions of a variant that go beyond 26, which is to say the Z variant, you now can go ahead and now have version 27, 28, 29, all the way up to 150 if you want. And we will just keep that rolling as much as you need. And we can extend that forever if we need to. But yeah, so we should be ready for the future now in terms of like how to deal with all these different crazy versions going forward. And I don't see us getting buried by that particular problem in the future. Okay, this is very sexy stuff, I know, but let's move on to the other good stuff. All right, let me see if I still have everyone hanging there. Intermittent power supply. No, yeah, don't know. All right, cool. All right, working on it. All right, here we go. All right, so variants were clearly going to be the problem. If we didn't address it this time out, it was just going to eat us alive. And so we're definitely addressing that one. But, you know, what else do we do with this one? Well, the other thing I really want to do this version out is I want to stop all the little showstoppers. And it's funny because it doesn't necessarily, beat up all of us so much, because we've been using the product for a million years. But if you're coming in cold especially, it's amazing how much friction there can be with a program that's been around as long as ComicBase, which has gotten quite big. It does a lot of stuff, but if you're coming in cold, you just don't know where to start with sometimes. And honestly, if you can solve some of these things, sometimes you also solve some problems that have been bedeviling a lot of us that we only notice when we have to like reinstall or we do things like that. Well, one of the big things I want to address is the fact that a big feature of ComicBase as we go every year is we've added phenomenal amounts of content to it every year. This last year alone, we added over 100,000 new pictures. I mean, it's just a mind-boggling amount to me. I think it wasn't until like about the third or fourth version of the Archive Edition that we even had 100,000 pictures in the program. And that's how many we added in 1 year alone of ComicBase. Well, along with that comes the idea like, well, wait, I've got to download all that stuff. And, internet connections have gotten faster, but they haven't gotten that much faster. And not everyone's got the fast internet connection. And, another thing we've seen over time is that, I've, back from starting in the 90s, and I was delighted with monitors kept getting, bigger and bigger and bigger. But then after a while, they kind of stopped, and then laptops came around. And so not everyone's sitting there rocking a 4K laptop with a giant, monitor on their desk. And so you can't necessarily just count on technology, making it so that you can take more and more content and squish it into smaller and smaller space and have it all work right. Some of the stuff, sometimes you need to make more and more stuff get squished into a smaller space, but you really got to just reskin the whole problem to make the whole thing happen. So one problem we've been having over the last number of years is, again, like let's say we added 100,000 new pictures to the program in just a year. Again, blows my mind when I think about that. I mean, but we start out with one DVD, then both sides of a DVD, 8.5 gigs, then 2 DVDs, 3 DVDs, 4 DVDs. Every time we've asked people about this, or we've looked at ourselves and we sit there and say, well, where do the extra 100,000 pictures go, Pete? The answer can't be we just ship another 4 DVDs with the whole thing, just in order to keep the whole thing up. And so we've always gone through this big production issue where it's like, well, how much can we dial the quality up or down and still maintain the pictures at an acceptable level while fitting everything on the disc? And it's really a struggle to the point where like we have had actually of late had to take it from 1,000 pixels tall comics as our standard, and if you have the Archive Edition, those things have bit by bit having it just a little bit smaller in order to keep the the picture quality as such that you would ever want to see the picture, because once you fall below a certain level of quality at JPEG, the whole thing just falls apart in a hurry, and you really can't go there. And after a while, there's only so much you can do with math to make it all happen. Now, we introduced a while ago the Blu-ray Archive Edition, which now is known as the 4K Archive Edition. That one, by the way, this next year is coming up, and it's going to be not one but 2 Blu-ray, 50 gig Blu-rays, which you say, wow, that's amazing. And that just gives us enough to take 4K images and present them in the quality that we really want to see them at. But it also means it's 90 gigs, right? And if your new laptop doesn't have a Blu-ray, right, so sticking in the second disc and installing from that isn't a big deal. But what if you have to install it by loading another 6 images, because you can only download 8 gigs at a time. That's kind of an internet limit. So if you have to install, 6 more things over your cable connection to get it onto your laptop, that's not necessarily a win for you. I mean, it looks pretty once you've done it, but it's no fun getting there. So what do we do about that? Because it's not like we're going to put less information in ComicBase every year. We're going to continue to put more and shinier information in. Well, we had a thought. And I'm really psyched about this one because it's really cool. What you do is this. And let me see if I can show it to you on the screen. All right. You might have noticed that I went and swapped out the pictures. So I'm now pointing out just the local pictures on my own machine. And if you look at these local pictures on my machine, and you look at the actual size of the images on it, they are freaking tiny. This one is an 82 by 128 pixel image. This one next to it is for the P cover, is a 84 by 128 pixel cover. Matter of fact, all the covers except for the number 1 ones are tiny, tiny images. Now, they're nice quality tiny images, but they're tiny, tiny images. So this is the part where you're sitting there going, hey, Bickford, I smell a rat here, man. You're going to give me 1 million tiny images now? How is this helping me? Well, the answer is, by giving you a new quick start edition of the download, I can make it so you download one file. Once you're installing the archive edition or even the 4K archive edition, you have if you want, you can have the option of either installing off disk, which is just fine. You can install the million picture archives, to get all 90 gigs of data or wherever that's on the 4K archive edition, or you can download one big file containing all the thumbnails for everything, as well as the high quality thumbnails for the number 1 issues. And then, using a new feature up here, which we added in, under Preferences, let me go ahead and zoom in on this guy if I can. I used to remember how to do this. Oh, it's not cooperating. That's okay. You know what? With everything else I've dealt with on this live stream, I'm just going to roll on. But if you look down here, there's a new option down in the Preferences. This appears for the Archive Edition owners to automatically download larger pictures when viewing items. If you've got that checked, and you go to any old title, and let's just say I went to Deceased, right? And let's go down to those ones just to prove that I'm not pulling the wool over your head. Here's the P issue, right? If I show this one right here, this should be 120 pixels tall. It should suck. I'm going to click on it now. Where am I? Right there. That doesn't look like 128 pixels, does it? That, to me, looks like that is full size. Let's look at the Q. That looks pretty full size, too. Let's look at the O, the N, the M. All of them look great. As a matter of fact, if I were to look at them, I would see that these are all 4K images, and they look spectacular. Well, what the heck happened there? Let's go back and look at them in the picture file again now. Now let's look at the images on this one. Well, this is now no longer a 120 pixel image. It's a 1700 pixel tall image. The Q image is now no longer a 120 pixels tall. It's now 1700 pixels tall. What happened is, with the new quick start option of ComicBase, and again, this applies to all the archive editions now, you install the program, you install one picture archive, it decompresses, you instantly have all the thumbnails. So if you're just looking down the grids, you don't have to do anything else. You're seeing all the differentiated thumbnails, so you can see which edition is which. But the second you want to see more detail on any of them, just click it. That fast, it'll load up the 4K image of this one if you've got the 4K edition. It'll load up the 1000 pixel tall image if you've got the regular archive edition. And you'll be looking at the thing in all its glory, no muss, no fuss, and a fraction of the disk space. This is probably my favorite new feature of the program. And it's funny because, in a way, if for all of us who have been using the program all the way along, it almost doesn't have any appeal at all, because it's like, well, wait, I spent years using the program. I've already downloaded all the images. But picture if you're anyone else, or if you're yourself on a new computer, or if you just got a new laptop and maybe it doesn't have as big a hard drive as the last one did. Suddenly, instead of taking hours to install the program and get going, you can get going in minutes. And every time, now instead of having like a 30 gig or 40 gig footprint for the program, or a 90 gig picture, footprint for the archive edition, you'll only have the pictures in detail of the titles you actually care about. Everything will still print the way it always printed. It'll all still appear in previews the same way it did. If I go up here to browse titles, and I just want to type random numbers like here's action, whatever else, and I'm going down here, all those thumbnails look exactly the same as they did beforehand. But what's different is I didn't need to pay for the disk space on anything in detail until I actually started using that thing. And all I did is I paid with a tiny fraction of a second to load in the image of the one I wanted. So that's the new Quick Start feature of ComicBase 2022. I'm, again, really stoked about this one. And I think you will be too. I think you'll dig it. All right, some other things just to make it a little bit easier to get to for folks who are new to ComicBase. All right, when you start the program, there's always things that we do whenever we help people out on tech support that's we always be like, hey, while we're here helping out with this, that, and the other thing, what if we help you with some stuff that like gets you started in a way that we would really suggest? It's for one reason or another, it's not the way the program necessarily defaults, but it's stuff that it's really kind of important to know just to kind of get you off on the right foot. So the first time you run ComicBase 22, you'll go and automatically this will come up. I'm going to load it up manually here, and you get a little welcome to ComicBase. And it just steps you through a couple of things. It says, all right, look, this is number one, ComicBase stores your data locally. A lot of people who come from other cloud-based programs, things like that, this is news to them. So it's important to kind of get the concept down there, because if you think that your data lives in a magic cloud, you might not take care of it exactly the way that you should. As far as do I keep backups? Do I save things, or where else? And you might have some different expectations of what the program does. So we tell you how ComicBase actually works. And then the very first thing we do is we say, hey, look, can we set up your backups for you so that it just automatically backs you up every time, and it does the normal things. And we say, look, do you want to back up the standard way, or do you want to customize, save your backup someplace else? Next, we say, all right, look, ComicBase comes with a year of updates to keep all your collection current, right? Now, there's, if you guys have ever downloaded a content update, there's all these settings, and let me pull up that dialog. If I go and I pull down an update, you guys probably know this dialog pretty well. Let me go ahead. Yep. Sorry, I did myself in. I totally borked my own demo because I'm running one version back from the version I was building this weekend, so now it wants me to update my program. Dope. All right, hang on. I will adjust this. I can get around this. I know a few things about this program. All right, so when you get a download, it'll say things like, hey, there's an update. Did you want to update, allow it to change different things? And of course, we really want you to allow us to correct cover dates and creator credits and series info and descriptions, all this stuff. We would like to be able to remove obsolete series if they've nothing in stock. This is the one I always talk about, where if DC solicits a new Nightwing series called Nightmare in Bloodhaven, but when it finally comes out, it's just called Nightwing 5th Series. We need to be able to get rid of that Nightmare in Bloodhaven series that we put in on good faith, but it turns out they never published. Same thing goes for items that never came out. We want to be able to get rid of these ghost entries. But the problem is all of these settings, if you do it, they affect your data, and so we don't want to we can't in good faith turn it on to automatically have these enabled so that you're really surprised. Let's say you're used to putting your own very custom data into some of these fields. Sometimes, I knew someone who used ComicBase to keep a bug collection. There are obviously never going to be bugs in at least now that sort in ComicBase. But if you're using it to manage your lepidoptery, you don't want it to have it remove items that you've put in there which aren't in our master database. That would be terrible. It would be throwing away all your work. But at the same time, for almost everyone else, we want to be able to set these things to, yes, allow us to make corrections. Yes, allow us to get rid of things like that. And so what we are doing as part of the quick start is we're prompting you and we're saying, hey, look, these are the issues with doing these things. Could we pretty please, go ahead and make those sorts of changes to your database? Let me go ahead and just fast forward through up to that point. Whoops. Where was I? Come on, baby. I think. Do I have it? Yes, I have it. I have it open behind. I hate that. This is the problem with swapping windows all over the place. But yes, do we want to allow you to make, update the content and so forth, or just don't change my stuff, right? We really want you to do this one. We also know that if we default it and we tell you what it's for, most people are going to hit next, and that's going to be a happier solution from almost everyone. And then finally, last thing we really want is we want you to be able to. We really want you to be able to go ahead and note that Sidekick is. How it is, and get Sidekick working with your database. And so let's see here. And so do we want to allow Sidekick to manage your database so that it gets backed up to the web, so that it gets new price updates and so forth? And so yeah, that's something we very much want to have happen. Say the word, it's going to add Sidekick to this your thing, and then you're done. 3 questions, in and out, you're ready to rock. We're going to give you more information if you want. Tell you about installing pictures, from things. We'll tell you about the ComicBase TV thing, so you can get tuned into awesome shows like this incredibly well-produced one we're having today, as well as the forums and so forth. But then just something to kind of buffer the opening experience as you go. And speaking of that, and let me just do a quick check here, because it seems like someone's trying hard to get a hold of me, and I think I better find out what. Well, I don't know, but... Okay. This is not a problem I need to deal with right now, so we're going to deal with it later, because why not? Okay, so, anyway, at this point, I'm just going to shut off everything that doesn't need to be shut off. Okay, so next thing that is really cool that we did in this new version here to get you going. So in addition to also like setting up your columns the way that you'd want to have them set up and so forth, is we want to make it so that it's easier to find out new ways of using the program without, we want to use all the time, we want to turn, I guess we want to say is we want to turn novice users into moderate users. We want to turn moderate users into expert users, and we want to do this is painlessly as possible. We always are playing around with, well, like, do we write help, getting started videos? Do we write help videos? I mean, how do we make that whole trick happen? And no one that I know has ever solved the problem better than video game designers. And what video game designers do is, you may or may not know whether there was ever a manual shipped with any video game you've ever done, because for about the last 25 years, video games have really set a standard that says the game itself is going to teach you how to play. And so part of what we do is when you first install the program, we tell you, look, here's some basic stuff and get you going on the whole thing. But then anytime you do anything that involves any amount of waiting whatsoever, we're trying to use that to teach you how to use the program a little bit better. And so we're using all that kind of like the load screen time. We're trying to use that to give you tips and so forth. So let me flip on over to here, and I'm just going to kick off something that takes a little time. So I'm going to go and rebuild some lists. Let's rebuild some item information, right? So now, let me pull it over onto the right screen. Come on, baby. Give me just a sec. This part where I have more than one monitor is kind of blows. But I will make this happen. Give me just a sec. By the way, let me check the chat while I'm doing that, and let's see how we're doing here. Let's see. Okay, so some question about ComicBase TV and Elegant Solutions. Is there a way to download them all at once? Yes, there is still an option to download all the covers. You can go ahead. What we're doing here is we made it so that when you go to download the program, there's a short series of recommended downloads, and then there's other downloads. So you can still go and say, look, I've got all the time in the world. I want to download all the million picture archives. At which point, yeah, you can go there and just download them all at once. I mean, that's not a problem. Go for it if you really want to. I just suspect most people after a while won't want to. All right, let's go back to the screen now. All right, so I'm updating some issue information here. And as this is going, you'll notice that the progress bar, when we know the wait's likely to be longer than about 10-20 seconds, automatically puts up tips. So it tells you things like, now, as you start, by the way, the tips are very geared towards the what's new in the new version and basic concepts. It also keeps track of how long you've been using the program, and so after you've been using it for a number of different days, you start getting more tips that lead you to more advanced topics. But for the first few days when you use the program, you're going to get a lot of what's new in the new version things, along with just some basic how to get going. Like here's our commercial for this particular ad, for this particular channel, and so forth. But just things like, look, I gotta kill some time as I'm waiting to update issue information. I can't make this process run any faster. I can't make this pause go away if you happen to need this stuff done, but at least I can be doing things while it's going on to teach you interesting things about how to use the program and so forth. And these they're kind of random. They cycle about every 40 seconds and you'll learn something new. So that is the next bit that we're doing on here. Let me check my notes and time. So 4:50. Oh my goodness, we're running like this. Has been a disaster. All right, let me pick it up here a little bit here. All right, let me show you a few other cool things. All right, I'm going to swap out here. And all right, so we talked about, big, boring, infrastructure-y type issues like, dealing with variants, and dealing with downloads and things like that. We talked about some things about how to make it so it's less painful to get started. Let's talk about stuff that's just pure eye candy, right? All right, so let's go on over here. Let's go under here, and let's go to our themes. Now, we have had a darkness theme for a long time. It has never been that dark, but now we have added, you guys have probably seen beforehand that, we always have the thing on the live stream where like there's reflection of the screen off my glasses, and I'm always very, sensitive about that. Well, now you have the ability to have really interesting dark themes, and not just the darkness theme itself, but you can have dark versions of every one of the major themes. And you still can, of course, customize the backgrounds and whatever else about them. But now, when they're dark, they really are dark themes. Oh, by the way, I'm going to pick this up a little bit. We also have a lot more customization options now as you're going about and choosing what's easiest on your eyes. You also can do some new stuff involving like the row coloring. Everyone always had the question of like, well, what's the red rows and the blue rows? What does that mean? Well, now we're actually telling you, hey, the item change coloring. Hey, and I remembered how to kick it in. So that was the item change coloring. It used to always just be hard-coded that if the price had gone up more than, I think, 15%, it went red. If it had gone down at all, it went blue, and otherwise it was black. That had to be probably the number one thing that people have been using ComicBase for years had never really known. Well, now you've got the option not only to say, just tell you what the heck the thing does, but also say, look, I want to turn it off. I find it distracting. Or I'm going to add in a whole new way of dealing with, which is I'm going to add in financial coloring. So let's go back to our friend the Avengers again. Whoops, Avengers is just spelled with an A-V. So now we can go in and we can get a list of whole things which aren't just hot and cold. Or in this case, we've chosen the financial. I guess I have this one disconnected. We've chosen this one not just with the financial coloring, but you can see. Look, has it gone up a lot? Has it gone down, or has it been soft down, or has it gone up just a little bit? And you can see by the different colorings on the whole things. So that's pretty, that's pretty slick. And I apologize here because I've been playing fast and loose with all things, so some of the things are not updating the way they should. But trust me, it will all work when you're going in there. Honestly, the fact that there's a video image at all right now, I'm counting as a win. All right, so let's go back here. And what else do we have that was kind of cool that I wanted to mention because we're really out of time, but we're going to go on. Quality. Let's talk about that. So another thing that we run into as a problem is things like, look, how do you standardize, people's names? I mean, is it Art Adams? Is it Arthur Adams? Is it Francesco de la Roca? Is it, D-E-L-A Roca? Is it De La Roca, etc.? Is the Roca capitalized? Good Lord. At some point, we've made an editorial decision on it, but we need to have the ability to put that across the whole place. We've added in a new find and replace. This is a feature which, by the way, if you ever use any other database on the planet, you'll notice does not exist. I mean, it's just not a thing that databases do. It is find and replace, but we do. And so you can pick any field you want that's a string field that uses text. It doesn't seem to make sense to find and replace numbers. But if you say things like, I want to go to all the artists, and I want to say, replace all the Art Adams with Arthur Adams, and I could do it across the whole field. I can do it in different formats and so forth, and I can do I can standardize these changes across the whole way. Is cardstock cover one word or two? Well, we can finally not only decide this for ourselves, but we can get out, we can get it standardized in the master database so it actually carries that through that way across the whole thing. And by the way, there's another, and this is since you guys are watching the live stream, I'll show you this one. You also can say all, which is to say, I want to find all uses of the word cardstock, no matter what field they're in, or like I want to choose all, De La Rocas, right? And I want to, standardize the, or Inhook Lee. God, I can't even remember it myself. Is it IN-HYUK or is it INHYUK or so forth? But I can hit that across all the fields and I can do it all at once with one find and replace swipe. Anyway, that's kind of cool. I think you'll dig that. All right, what else is cool? Just do a couple real fast hits on the whole thing. Books have finally gotten a publication date. That's one of the things that we're squeezing in right at the last minute. Still dealing with a couple things on that one. So you can say things like this is like the April 2023 edition, as opposed to the April 2022 edition or whatever else. You have finally got the ability to save multiple versions of the same report to the cloud. We let you name them last time, but unfortunately there was an interface issue on the server where it still, even though it had a different name, would only come up with one different version. Now if you want to say, these are my Marvel books, these are my DC books, this is the ones I want to sell, this is the price list, but only the ones I want to sell next Tuesday, you can now save those up to the cloud and have those reports saved automatically. The program is more responsive overall. We've made it so there's way less places where it gets busy doing things like updating pictures where it doesn't listen to you. So we've really ramped back some of these background things to give you more control of the program as you go. And finally, one thing I wanted to mention is that when last year we mentioned that we didn't want to, we wanted to ship a lot of content out to you guys, but we didn't want to have you hammering our servers too badly. So we rented space from different set of content servers to allow you to download, disk images and things like that without bringing down the Atomic Avenue and ComicBase websites. That's great as far as that went. The problem is the fallback position, because we didn't have infinity money, is once I think it was like a terabyte of bandwidth in a calendar month had been used, which of course always happens during launch month because everyone wants to download the new thing. After that, suddenly the page would revert into a quote ad-supported mode, where suddenly there'd be all of these millions of ads on the download page that the content delivery guy would put in there. We didn't really have an option for any reasonable amount of money of just buying more bandwidth, but we have done a thing now where we are now have 4 times the bandwidth going out the door that's hosted from 4 different content services, and you get automatically load balanced between the ones, so you should be way less likely as you're going forward to get into that mode where like you're hunting around saying which of these things is the download link for disk number 23's picture archive, which by the way also I'm hoping that by adding the quick start in there we make it so you're much less likely to want to download 90 gigs of content all at once. But if you do, look, that's your right. You paid for it, certainly go for it if you want. We're just hoping that you find that it's actually more hassle than it's worth, and that you'll just go ahead and pull things down as they go. Anyway, that's kind of the summary of what we're doing here. Thank you. It has been a rocky podcast. We've had more technical foo go on than I can imagine, but anyway, thank you for sticking with us, man. I'll do a quick check of the chat, and we'll take it from there. Let's see here. Oro says, TV Lepidoptery. Oh, hell. Yes. It's a great podcast when someone's explaining, the vocab that we're doing here, like axiology. All right, let's see here. Greg wants a reminder when we have a dedicated thread on the ComicBase message boards where you can request the topics. Let's see. Gregory has a question. Let's see. How does new version handle things like pseudonyms, i.e. Mike DeMio versus Mike Esposito? Interesting question. So we have in the past, for instance, Denny O'Neil. Was it Denny O'Neil? Or was it... God, I always get these ones different. Was it Denny O'Neil or was it Art... darn. Krusty Bunkers. Neil Adams. I think one of those two would sometimes write as crusty or sign as crusty bunkers, which isn't actually how they do it. I think mostly in the past we've written them as the person we knew they were really. Sometimes we write them as or Neil Adams parenthesis as crusty bunkers is the way that we tend to prefer doing that sort of thing. But the nice thing is we actually have half a shot now, due to find and replace, of picking one, sticking it out there, making all the changes we need to across all the issues at once, and actually having it take. Because beforehand, you just get buried. I mean, you correct it one place, but then it pops up 80 others until you can go and just say, look, no, across the whole thing, Krusty Bunkers is going to be written as this. Then you got no chance of actually standardizing it. So we are going to do that. Let's see here. Steve wants to remind everyone, be very careful with find and replace all the fields, because you can't see what will be changed before it's changed. It's just like if you say find and replace all with anything. Make sure you're typing something reasonable. Because it's as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, you wouldn't go to your graduate thesis and replace all the words "the" with the word "but." I mean, it'd be even worse is if you replaced it with the word like "an" or something like that, because then it'd be very hard to undo. But yes, I mean, if you are going to do find and replace, look, one good thing you've got going for yourselves is, look, if you do anything just crazy, you can always just download the latest content update, and it's going to tend to put things back if you just went nuts. But yeah, no, I mean, if you're going to do a find and replace, make sure you're finding and replacing something that's unique, like Krusty Bunkers, which isn't going to appear as part of something else. But if that's something you're worried about, find and replace one at a time. It works that way as well. All right, so let's see here. And some more comment on pseudonyms. Andre's question about the cover disc of the site. Says the cover disc on the site. There's a quick start is there in a 6-disc set and a 12-disc set. Yeah. So when you go to download with the new version, when you click on the green download your product thing, you're going to see two tabs along the top, or two radio buttons along the top. One it'll be set initially is going to be the suggested downloads, and that one's going to be the program and the quick start pictures. And then there's other downloads, which will have all the ancillary material, which are things like, here's all the individual picture archives of everything if you want to go that way as well. Yeah, so we're trying to nudge you into downloading the less heavy set, because honestly, we'll be happier, less bandwidth for us. I think you'll be happier because it's less hassle for you and less disk space, which, disk space is kind of cheap. But if I had a way to work ComicBase and every picture I cared about would be there automatically with no real space taken at all, I would take that every time over the one that I have to install 100 gigs of data to get rolling. All right, so just subscribe for the next version. Great, guys. It's coming up very shortly. We're in the release candidate stage right now, where basically we're putting out one saying, well, we have no open bugs against this one. Let's beat on it for a while, and then we basically play King of the Mountain with the whole thing until you knock them down until you can't knock them down, or at least until they stand on the mountain long enough that they can crow and say, "Yep, we've got this." So, the first candidate lasted, I think, all of 12 hours, but candidate number 2 is coming up, and we think he's even tougher than the last release candidate. Next week or so should be pretty exciting, but it's coming up shortly, guys. We hope you'll enjoy it. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.